in your life right now that's challenging, painful. It's just a reminder to take a little bit better care of yourself. It's worth it. You can have this feeling anytime you choose.
What's going down, everybody? Welcome back to another Commander Ad Populum. This is episode 16. I am your host, Ryan. It's been a couple weeks since I've been down in Studio CCO with the two-part interview with my good friend Jesse over the last 2 weeks. I have had a week off. It doesn't feel like a week off because I've been pretty busy preparing for Magic Fest Vegas at the end of the month, but here I am today, back, episode 16, brought to you by my generous sponsor, FusionGamingOnline.com, based out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. You can check them out for all your Commander, Magic the Gathering, gaming needs. And of course, you can find Commander Ad Populum on themanabase.com, along with all of FusionGamingOnline.com sponsored content. Check me out there. You can find other video and articles and Magic content there. It's all great. Couple shoutouts and a little bit of business before we get going here. First, new patron shoutouts. Rebecca Henrik, thank you very much for becoming a patron. And Evan Fox, thank you very much. You guys have unlocked the patron benefits. I have just released part 2 of my altered art tutorial intro over on the Patreon page. If you're not a patron, not a big deal. It is free for everybody. The intro is free just to kind of kick things off and let people see my studio or my workspace, some of the supplies I use, what they all cost, all that kind of stuff. So those are a lot of fun to just to kind of chat and share my thoughts with everybody outside of, you know, the random Twitter post or Facebook or the podcast proper. Just kind of a look behind the scenes there. And part 3 will be coming out this week or next week, as soon as I have time to kind of sit down and just make sure it all jives, and I'll post it and I'll put it up on Twitter at CADPopcast. And of course, the Patreon page, patreon.com/CADPopcast. If you want to help me out, or if you're in a position to help grow the show or keep the lights on, as it were, in Studio CCO, I'd be most appreciative of. And of course, there are some patron benefits like discounts on altered art commissions and preferred commission slots, and also first crack at any of the stuff that I post on the CAD Popcast Twitter page. Patrons do have an opportunity to buy that before the general population, I guess. Final little bit of housekeeping. If you'd like to submit your own community-based topic to Commander Ad Populum, you can shoot an email to cadpopcast@gmail.com or contact me through a Facebook message. You can just search Commander Ad Populum on Facebook. I'll come up there. Without further ado, let's get into our community topic this week. It's a short one, but I think it needs to be mentioned that there was, of course, some fallout or some follow-ups needed after my depression and anxiety interview with my friend Jesse from the last 2 weeks. I've received a couple messages and a couple emails, and I've seen that people shared those 2 episodes with their friends on Facebook, or they've retweeted it or whatever, just to raise a little bit of awareness about the topic, because it's always relevant and it's always important, and everybody's recognizing that it's becoming more important. And I think it's all on us to make sure that we're looking after each other and looking after our friends and looking after our family, whether we play Magic with them or otherwise, right? And sometimes all that looks like is you're sitting down at your LGS or you're playing your weekly game with all your group of friends and you say, yo, how's everybody doing? Everybody's good, right? And like we said over the last couple weeks that we did the interview, it's just about kind of being present in the moment for each other, you know what I mean? And if you recognize that somebody's not as present, well, maybe that's on you just to ask them how they're doing. And that leads me to kind of the little bit of the story I wanted to tell for this week's community topic. It comes from a listener, David. I'm not going to use his last name because he mentions his wife in the story and that she was going through some tough times with her own depression, and she was actually hospitalized for it. And there was some risk of him and her losing their kids, and he said that was going to be the worst imaginable outcome from their whole family struggling with this, and I'll save everybody the details because I don't want another kind of really sad down in the dumps podcast. But David concluded his story with, "This MTG dad ain't giving up. Cheers, mate. Take care." And after his little bit of the story he told me, he ended it on a positive note, and I'll break it down to what I just really think it means when he says, "This MTG dad ain't giving up." What that means is there are things that are more important to him, i.e. his wife, his family, his well-being, his family's well-being. Those things are more important to him than whatever else it is that he's got going on, right? Hanging with his friends, watching the game, going and playing F&M, right? If his wife isn't present to take care of the kids, well, it's his job to step up, right? It's his job to do the extra work or put in the extra mile if she's not able to. And I know if it were me, having a wife that's gone through, some postpartum type depression and stuff, like it's on us, again, just like our play group, to make sure that we're looking after the people that are the closest to us. And that's not just because I'm a dad too, or I have a wife too. It should be everybody, because they care about other people, because they have a significant other. And again, I do like to relate it back to Magic. So, I mean, if you're recognizing the signs or symptoms of somebody having issues like this in your play group, of course, mention it to them. Or if you're seeing somebody, just yesterday, I was at F&M playing with a relatively new player, and he's having some trouble, sequencing his stuff and then tapping all his mana to tutor for something, and then he cast a Craterhoof behemoth, but then he cast a creature after it, and he was like being a little bit hard on himself because he kind of sequenced things out of order. And I just said, you know what, if you've never done that exact play before, let's just pretend that you cast your creature, your other creature, and then your Craterhoof behemoth, just so you can get like the extra 6 points of damage, because all your stuff has trample. You're gonna win the game. Let's just make it easy. So pretend you played that first, add up all your power, subtract our blockers because you have trample, and let's call it a game. And I could tell that was kind of just like a little bit of a weight off of his shoulders, where it was just like, oh, thanks. Yeah, that makes it a lot easier. Not only to have somebody not really care that I sequenced it wrong because I'm new, but also to give me that little bit of the tip of the hat, like, oh, all my stuff has trample. I guess I do just add all my power, subtract all your toughness, and whatever tramples over is more than your life. That makes it easy. And it could be something like that really just makes somebody's day and really just helps them get through whatever they're going through, right? So David, thank you for writing in. I wish you and your family the best, of course. And again, if anybody around you's having issues, just try and help them in whatever way you find best or whatever way you know how to. Okay, moving on to our technical section today. I'm trying to switch things up and attack this section of the show or this portion of the show from kind of different angles. And if anybody has any input on what angles they like best, if you like comprehensive rules the best, if you like, deck building advice the best, or the methods that I do things by, let me know. Just get after me on Twitter. Tell me what you think. Today, I'd like to talk about bad commanders. More specifically, maybe just leveraging things that people think are bad. And this topic's kind of near and dear to my heart because I like playing bad decks and bad creatures, and I really like winning the game when I'm playing cards that are really bad. And it reminds me of a time, 5, 10, whatever number of years ago, where the joke that I always used to make was Commander, or EDH at the time, EDH, we only play bad cards, or I love that I can play bad cards and it's still good, right? Or when people would see, previews for a new set coming out, Zendikar comes out and there's some terrible card that came out that's like terrible in draft and not standard playable, and oh yeah, it must be for EDH, right? Or it's good in EDH, that kind of stuff. So I really like thinking back to those kinds of days, and it makes me think when I'm thinking about things that are thought of as traditionally bad in Magic, it makes me think, okay, well, what is good? Because let's just do the opposite, right? And a very trivial and easy example to understand is like, okay, you start the game at 40 life. Having 40 life is better than having 4 life, 2 life, or 10 life, right? Anything under 40 life is better than having 40, or is worse than having 40. So, of course, barring any weird circumstances, blah, 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 right? Like, the more life you have, traditionally, the better. So if we want to do something that's the opposite of that, or something that is bad, I very much like to find creative ways to do that. So automatically my brain goes to different kinds of black decks. And I'm going to relate this to our set retrospective for the day, because there are some bad cards in this set that I'm sure we can make good. And I've experimented with building this kind of deck in the past. So I like black. It's my favorite monocolor. There's lots of ways to either pay life, or when you draw cards, you have to pay life. So your life total's constantly ticking down, 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 down. With some recent cards like Villa's Blood Arbiter, or whatever his name is, whenever you pay life, draw that many cards. And Commander 19 Super All-Star Crick, Son of Yawgmoth, you can pay all black mana symbols by paying 2 life, like they make all black Phyrexian mana. There's lots of ways to do it in black, and maybe we can play something like Eternity Vessel, I think it's called, from Zendikar. So it's an artifact, you cast it, and it enters the battlefield with a certain number of charge counters on it equal to your life total. And whenever you play a land, so it's got landfall, go back up to that number of life. So you go down, 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 drawing all your cards in black, and then you play a land and you shoot all the way back up to whatever, 30-something, 40-something, whatever it was. There's a few different cards that are mirror effects, like Mirror Universe is from Legends, and it's like $300, but there's Magus of the Mirror, which it's a creature, you tap and sacrifice it to switch life totals with an opponent. And then there's a couple cards in our set retrospective today that are going to really take advantage of that. So I guess if you want to go back to Commander of old, Commander 5, 10, 12 years ago, just look at things that are traditionally thought of as bad now and find some way to leverage them. And it doesn't need to be, going down to as little life as possible and then switching life totals. It doesn't need to be that. It can be, like sacrificing all your land to gain some benefit, right? And then maybe you play something like Splendid Reclamation, right? Like I've got a lands deck that's got 63 land in it, and it wants lands in its graveyard almost as much as it wants lands in play. And lands in graveyards is traditionally thought of as bad because how do they get there? Well, they're either being sacrificed or destroyed, and that isn't like the norm. You want your lands to kind of be unmolested on the battlefield, because if they die, then you're probably going to lose. So let me know your bad ways to play Magic and how you've turned that into a bonus or a positive, or how you've leveraged it, right? We talk about leverage and breaking symmetry sometimes when we talk about stacks decks, hyper-tuned control decks that fight combo in competitive EDH. And I'm taking a step all the way back from that and saying, okay, let's do the same thing. Let's leverage or break symmetry, but let's do it on something that's like really bad that you've kind of turned around to make it fun. My version is my Lord of Tressorhorn deck. What's yours? Get at me, CADPopcast on Twitter. What's your bad deck? How did you make it good? Okay, I teased at it a bunch. I said that we're going to talk about some cards that are doing bad things that we turn into good things in the set retrospective. Let's get after it today. Today's set retrospective, Weatherlight. So Weatherlight, introduced in June 1997. It's got the little book set symbol. And every week I'm surprised because I keep thinking, oh man, I'm going to have to stretch. I'm going to have to find something in this set retrospective that makes this set relevant. And every single week since we've started, like 4 months ago, every single week I find a bunch of stuff that I say, oh yeah, that is from Weatherlight. Or, oh yeah, that is from Fallen Empires. You know what I mean? So let's get into it a little bit. 167 cards in this set, so it's a small set. It's got returning bad mechanics of flanking and phasing like we've talked about over the last couple weeks, and cumulative upkeep that we talked about in the technical section a couple weeks ago. I remember Weatherlight was one of the first boosters that I ever purchased in a store. I remember some of the cards that were in it. I think my rare was when I'm looking over the whole set, I'm gonna recognize what my rare was, but I don't remember what it was, but I know what it is. So the Weatherlight set was produced by an entirely different team of developers than Mirage and Vision, so it does have a little bit of a different feel. The art direction is a little bit different, but it continues like the same storyline, and this is when things are starting to get good. You know what I mean? Like the Weatherlight was this flying ship, and it's getting these different crew members that are going to Wrath and trying to like stop the Evancar of Wrath to try and stop an imminent Phyrexian invasion on Dominaria. Like, this is really cool. The Vorthos cast just did they're a Vorthos or a Magic Story podcast. They just did a 3-part kind of mini series on the Weatherlight story, like the prelude to the Weatherlight, and then what happened kind of during the events, what happens in the novels and the stories. It was very good. I very much liked it because that is part of my favorite portion of the Magic story. So no new themes and mechanics like proper in Weatherlight, but they introduced something that we kind of all call graveyard order matters. And this is like if you have the top card of your library or the top card of your graveyard is a creature, you have to leave it there. And this is a very confusing mechanic for when people were moving from casual or kitchen table to competitive scene where, you know, I mean, they're thumbing through their graveyard and they're switching the order of cards to better organize it, which you can do. But if you have a graveyard orders matter card in your deck, you can't do that. And it's resulted in game losses because some cards like just don't function. And if you change, or they do function if you put a creature on top, and it like it's the functional equivalent of cheating if you take a creature from the bottom and put it onto the top if you've got a card where graveyard order matters in play. So if you're playing anything like a couple of the cards I'm going to talk about, Spinning Darkness is the first one that I've tried to jam in decks multiple times. It's instant for black 4. You may remove the top 3 black cards in your graveyard from the game. You may exile the top 3 black cards instead of paying Spinning Darkness's mana cost. So you can cast it for free if you've got 3 black cards in your graveyard and you just remove them from the game. And then what the card does is it deals 3 damage to target non-black creature, and we gain 3 life. So it's a free removal spell provided you have 3 black cards in your graveyard. I kind of like this card. I wish it hit players, but whatever, doesn't matter. It's not a very good card. I just like it because it's bad. It's got a cool picture too. So a couple cycles in Weatherlight. There is a cycle of 1 mana creature auras that give you some kind of, I don't know, marginal effect like a 1 mana enchantment aura would do, but you can also sacrifice them to get another benefit. And this is kind of like the first attempt at giving you your card back if somebody tried to 2-for-1 you, right? Like you cast an enchantment on your creature, then somebody kills it in response, so you lose your creature and your enchantment because it has nothing to enchant at that point, right? So there's a card called Phantom Wings, and it's blue 1, enchant creature aura, enchanted creature gains flying. Cool. Sacrifice Phantom Wings, return enchanted creature to its owner's hand. So once it's on your creature, you can sacrifice it, maybe in response to a sweeper or a removal spell, and you just bounce the creature to your hand. And the other thing you could do with this one in particular is you could enchant your opponent's creature and then sacrifice it, like the aura, to return enchanted creature to its owner's hand, and you're getting rid of a blocker. So this one is kind of cool. The green one like gives +1/+1. If you sacrifice it, it gives +3/+3. So if you want to get something just temporarily out of lightning bolt range, for example, you just sacrifice it to give +3/+3. The white one prevented all damage done to the creature when you sacrifice it. The black one, Coils of Medusa, +1/-1, and you can sacrifice Coils of the Medusa to destroy target non-wall creature, blocking enchanted creatures. So if you were kind of gambling and throwing an attacker in there and just hoping they wouldn't block, well, if they do, you just sacrifice the coils to destroy the blocker. So kind of cool. They were a cycle, and I like it. Like, we know that Magic players like cycles from previous set retros, and these ones I think they're all common. I think I own them all. I have lots of duffel bag I talked about in episode 1 of my origin stories. Yeah, I got lots of Lots of Weatherlight. So moving on to some individual cards, we have got 3 legendary creatures. So not the most profound set for introducing new legendary creatures, not like sets today where they have like 20 legendaries or whatever. We've got Meraxis of Keld. He is a star for red 4, and his power and toughness are each equal to the total number of untapped artifact creatures and lands you control. So he kind of rewards you for starting your turn, going straight to combat when everything is untapped and just swinging in for like a bunch of damage and then doing everything post-combat. Something that new players got to kind of remember, and that's kind of built into cards now where it never used to be. Maybe this is kind of the first one that kind of gives you the tip of the hat, like, hey, attack, don't give away any information, leave all your mana open for combat tricks and removal, resolve all your combat, and then play the rest of your turn. Lots of times new players, if you're new and you just untap, draw your card, and start rushing into your turn and then attacking, well, you're giving away information. And it allows your opponents to see more things that aren't like removal spells or tricks in your hand anymore, because they could have been before. You're giving away that information and you're letting your opponent make a more informed decision. So Meraxis of Keld actually encourages you to just start attacking and then do everything after. So I like that. Our next 2 legendary creatures are both Phyrexians. They're bad guys. And we've actually built this kind of a deck kind of using either of them on Commander Cookout. I don't remember what episode, but these are Gallowbraid and Morinfen. So they're both, one's a 5/5. Gallowbraid's a 5/5 for 5. Morinfen's a 5/4 for 5. Gallowbraid tramples, Morinfen flies. They both have cumulative upkeep, pay 1 life. Yeah. So when I was talking a few minutes ago about leveraging having a low life total and then switching lives, or switching life totals, that's kind of the angle that we took on that episode of Commander Cookout. It was episode 110. I just looked it up. Episode 110, loser roll call. These guys are not good, but if you can leverage what they're asking you to do and turn it into a positive, then, hey, you might have something, because traditionally, when you do something bad, people tend to just kind of leave it alone because it's not a very powerful thing. If it was cumulative upkeep, gain 1 life, well, people be wanting to kill that because you're going to gain a whole ton of life with it. But nobody cares if you're intentionally putting yourself down to 2. So those are our legendaries, Gallowbraid and Morinfen. Super cool. Just, I like Phyrexians, I like the bad guys, I like black, I like doing things that are bad. They just speak to me. Looking at some individual cards, and again, like, I thought I'd have to stretch here, but no, there's really good cards. There's cards that are bad that I like, and then there's cards that are just like, they fit into these niche strategies where you're like, oh yeah, that is something that I would play. So first one I want to talk about, Abduction. It's an enchant creature, blue 2. You untap enchanted creature and you gain control of it. And if enchanted creature dies, put that creature into play. So you could untap a creature of your opponents and gain control of it, and then if it dies, they get it back. Or if you have something that's really good that you want to bring back if it dies, you can use Abduction. It kind of acts like a totem armor before totem armor existed. Or it's going to kind of like give you pseudo vigilance or a blocker or something because it untaps the enchanted creature. So it's kind of cool. Next one, Abeyance. I've never known how to say this card. Abeyance. Anyways, it's an instant for white 1. Until end of turn, target player cannot cast instants, sorceries, or activate abilities. Then you draw a card. Whew. So it's like a silence, but you also draw a card. That's kind of cool. I like, just personally, I don't know if it's good, Abyssal Gatekeeper. It's a 1/1 for 2. And if it dies, when it dies, each player sacrifices a creature. So if it dies, like, we have to sacrifice another one. But again, if we just kind of build around that, if we want to sacrifice stuff or we got tokens, it kind of acts like a dies trigger Merciless Executioner, or the zombie version of it that I'm drawing a blank on right now. So if you like your ETB, everybody sack a creature, or you like your dies, everybody sack a creature, those 2 effects both exist. That's Abyssal Gatekeeper. Cool art on that too. Lots of flavor in the art here because they're following a group of, they're following the crew of the Weatherlight, right? We've got Argivian Find and Argivian Restoration. So Argivian Find is an instant for just white. Return target artifact or enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. That's artifact recursion in mono white. That's cool. And Argivian Restoration, I think this is a commander staple actually. Blue 2 sorcery, put target artifact card from your graveyard onto the battlefield. Whew, that is a good card right there. I like that. That costs 4, so if you can like mill a big time artifact and then get it for 4 mana, that's pretty good. I like Aura of Silence. This is another EDH staple, so it's white 1 for an enchantment, and it's artifacts and enchantments cost your opponents 2 more to cast. You can sacrifice it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. We would say you can sacrifice it to naturalize something. I like a little group huggy type card called Bubble Matrix. It's a 4-drop artifact. All damage dealt to creatures is reduced to nothing. There's another one from Mono Black, Buried Alive. This is a combo enabler or just a tutor. What it is a sorcery for black 2. Search for 3 creature cards, put them into your graveyard. Whoo-wee. See, like there are cards in here that enable strategies that are like serious contenders for your deck. I know Buried Alive goes in even some like Mono Black CEDH Sidisi decks that are like tutoring for Razaketh, just so they can like infinite tutor their whole deck. So I like that. I like Debt of Loyalty. This is actually one of my favorite white cards. It's an instant for white 1. So you got to have 3 mana open to cast this. That's not nothing, but what it does is instant speed, regenerate target creature, gain control of that creature. So you save it from dying and then you get it. It can be used on your own creature. You can regenerate your creature, then you just keep it. Or if somebody reaches over the table and tries to kill your opponent's big fatty, you just go regenerate it. Then you get it. I love that one for sure. Next one we got here, the CEDH crowd's going to know Doomsday. Black, pay half your life. Okay, so I don't know, on turn early in the game, that might be like pay 20 life. Exile your whole graveyard and library and just pick 5 cards from it, and you get those 5 cards in your library. So you pay half your life and you just make your library 5 cards, and then you try and win with those 5 cards. Usually some kind of combo, some kind of draw enabling thing or cast for free type thing to rip through those 5 cards really quick and then maybe win with like a Lab Maniac or something. Pretty cool card. Just be careful if you're playing it outside of like competitive tables. If that speaks to you and you're a little bit new, just be aware that you're going to get some sideways glances when you cast your Doomsday, because not very many people think that card's fun because it enables you to just win so quickly out of nowhere. I like Firestorm as well. This is kind of like a red sweeper for 1 mana. So it's red, instant, choose and discard X cards and as an additional cost. And it deals X damage to each of X target creatures or players. So you just discard a couple cards and you can just divvy out a bunch of damage to different targets. So I actually like that card just because it's utility, right? And especially like if you're playing some kind of storm strategy, like maybe Izzet or Grixis Storm, when you're going to have a ton of cards and you just got to like offload a bunch of cards to either get them back with Past in Flames, or if you just need to get rid of blockers because you just cast like an Empty the Warrens, Firestorm's going to do it. Liege of the Hollows. That was my first rare card. There it is. I knew I'd recognize it from my Weatherlight pack. So let's read this. I don't think it's good, but let's read it. So this is a creature spirit, 3/4 for green 2. When Liege of the Hollow dies, each player may pay any amount of mana. Then each player puts a number of 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens onto the battlefield for the amount of mana they paid. Okay. Very neat. So when it dies, you just pay a bunch of mana and get a bunch of squirrels. Sure. I don't think that's good, but I'm sure you can fabricate a scenario where you want it to die, you have a bunch of mana, and you're playing Squirrel Tribal or what have you. I know that some people are very much into squirrels. And of course, squirrel art painted by our boy, Ron Spencer. He is regarded as one of my very favorite Magic artists, and he does a lot of squirrels. Anyways, moving on because we're getting long on time here. We are looking at Commander Staple, Mind Stone, originally printed in Weatherlight, so you can thank Weatherlight for your 2-drop mana rock that you can sack to draw a card. Null Rod, which shuts off your Mind Stone, 2-drop artifact that doesn't let you activate any abilities of artifacts. I'm just seeing a ton of cards here that I know are just like really good. Orcish Settlers that destroys lands. Peacekeeper that makes it so creatures can't attack. Psychic Vortex, that is a staple in Shu Yun decks now, like 20 years later. That's cumulative upkeep, draw a card, but at the end of your turn you have to discard your whole hand. Very excellent. Strands of Night is an enchantment where you go black, black, pay 2 life, sacrifice a swamp to get a creature from your graveyard directly into play. So that is cool. Of course, there's some other very fringe playable stuff like Urborg Justice and Veteran Explorer and things like that, but I want to just spend the last couple minutes on the land. So we've got Winding Canyons. You can tap it and pay 2 to give creature cards in your hand. You can give them flash. So that's very excellent. I think that card's actually getting expensive too. There is Scorched Ruin. I think that this card's expensive too. When it enters the battlefield, you have to sacrifice 2 untapped lands or sacrifice Scorched Ruin, but you can tap it for 4 colorless mana. So that's neat. I think people play that, don't they? I think they must. They must. It's expensive. And finally, we've got Lotus Veil. This was kind of just reprinted with Lotus Field or whatever it is in Core Set 2020. So this, when it enters the battlefield, you have to sacrifice 2 untapped lands, or you have to sacrifice it, and you can tap it for 3 mana of any one color. So Scorched Field and Lotus Veil are kind of similar in that sense, where you have to sacrifice stuff, but they're going to make you go up on mana. And the new one is very similar from Core Set 2020 or Modern Horizons or whatever it is, except it has hexproof. So once you sacrifice your lands, you're not going to get strip mined. So super cool. If you have any Weatherlight gems that I maybe just glossed over because we're getting long on time, get at me on Twitter at CADPopcast or comment on the Facebook post for episode 15. I'd love to hear from you. Again, if you have a community topic to submit, I would love to hear it. If it's a feel-good Magic story, if it is a technical section or something geared towards helping new players, I'd love to hear it. CADPopcast@gmail.com, at CADPopcast on Twitter, or search Commander Ad Populum on Facebook. Or if you're a patron and you would like to shoot me something on Discord or send me a message on just like the Patreon messenger service, I would be happy to answer you there as well. Patreon.com/CADPopcast. Big thank you to all the patrons. Keep an eye out for the final Altered Art tutorial intro, and also big thank you to FusionGamingOnline.com for all of your Weatherlight needs, because apparently there's lots. Apparently there are a lot of good cards in Weatherlight, like we're finding every single week, and we will talk about another set next week on Commander Ad Populum, everybody. I will see you next Wednesday.